Ten Commandments to be in every classroom?
Well, the lead author of the bill is Republican State Senator Phil King. And he said when this was first introduced that the Ten Commandments is a part of Texas and Texas and the American story. And he went on to say if students don't know about the Commandments, they'll never really understand the foundation for much of American history and law. And King and other proponents of SB 10 argue that displaying the Ten Commandments reinstates religious liberty in Texas and reflects the state's history and traditions. King also cited that the presence of the Ten Commandments monument on the Texas Capitol grounds is sort of an example of those traditions. But opponents, who we've also heard from, they're emphasizing the historic separation of church and state, right? They're concerned that the bill would impose religious beliefs on students. And Democratic State Senator Sarah Eckhart, they said that, there should be a strong separation of church and state.
So we see an example here on the screen of what these posters look like. This is from Hayes CISD, which we'll talk about a little later. But first, are districts required to pay for these posters themselves?
No, they are not. The law actually specifically says that school districts don't have to spend any money. The law does authorize them to spend money on the posters if they want to. So if they as a district decide to buy 10 Commandment posters, this law clears a way for them to do that. But the real requirement in this law that has teeth is that if a private donation of 10 Commandment posters is made to the school district, they are required to post them in classrooms. And already we've seen this happen. There are a handful of school districts in Central Texas that have reported receiving 10 Commandment donation posters, some smaller donations like, 30 posters, but some very large donations of thousands of posters.
Is there any oversight of who is allowed to donate these posters to school districts?
No. There's no language in the bill that says you can only take it from this sort of group or this sort of person. It says private donations of 10 Commandment posters, you're required to put them up once you receive them.
So we mentioned this law is already in effect. It took effect back on September 1st. There's already, though, been some significant legal pushback here, some various litigation out there. Talk to us about the lawsuits that have already been filed.
Well, there have been 2 big lawsuits filed in Texas suing school districts to block them from displaying the 10 Commandments. And the folks who are suing in these cases, they're individual families, but also religious leaders, and they're being backed by the ACLU and other civil rights organizations. Both lawsuits argue that Senate Bill 10 is unconstitutional. And the first lawsuit actually argues the law, quote, forcibly subjects students to religious doctrine and beliefs in a manner that conflicts with their family's religious and non-religious beliefs and practices. By our count, more than 20 school districts are currently being sued across both of those lawsuits. In one of the cases, the first one, Rabbi Nathan versus the Alamo Independent School District, the judge has temporarily blocked some districts from putting the posters up. But and this is a big but, very quickly after the judge made that order, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton said in a statement that order only applies to the school districts that are explicitly named in that lawsuit. And it was essentially a warning that his office was making to other school districts not named that you still need to comply with Senate Bill 10.
So which districts were named in that lawsuit and are therefore, blocked currently from displaying these posters?
So 11 school districts were named: Houston, Dallas, in the Houston, Dallas, and San Antonio areas. In Central Texas, Dripping Springs and Lake Travis ISD were named. Austin ISD was a part of this lawsuit, but at some point they were dismissed from the lawsuit. But district leaders also clarified that at the time the dismissal order was made to them, it still required them to follow any court order that came out of this case, meaning from their perspective and their legal team, they are still blocked from displaying the posters.
Right. So you mentioned there are 2 lawsuits. We just talked about the first one. The second one actually was filed earlier this week by the ACLU and a coalition of religious freedom organizations. They're suing 14 more districts to try to get from blocked from displaying these posters.
That's correct. And that lawsuit includes some large school districts as well, like Fort Worth ISD, Georgetown ISD in our area. But so far, a similar injunction has not been issued blocking those districts from posting the Ten Commandments.
So it's a bit of a patchwork here, different rules for different districts currently. Let's recap here. The law is in effect statewide. Most districts are required to post them, but litigation means specific districts are not required to post them right now.
Yes. So you have one group of school districts that have to follow this court order telling them not to display the posters. Then you have another group of districts in this latest lawsuit who very well may see a similar temporary injunction, but don't have one currently. And then the majority of the school districts in the state are not party to any lawsuits right now. And therefore, they have to follow the law. That's what the Attorney General has said, that if you're not explicitly named in these lawsuits, you need to comply with Senate Bill 10.
Right. Let's talk about a specific example here in Central Texas. Hays CISD is a district that we have profiled in our newscasts. They are one of the districts that is currently required to display these posters, right? And they've actually had a large donation of these posters. Who did the posters come from for Hays CISD?
Well, records show in July that a representative of a nonprofit called My Faith Votes reached out to the school district and asked them, how many classrooms do you have within your district? The district said that they have 2,539 classrooms. And in August, a few days before the school year began, that same person who reached out with My Faith Votes, they donated 2,500 posters to the school district. And we should note that when this person filled out their donation form, they did name a different organization, Million Voices, which is partnered with My Faith Votes. And that's according to a press release posted on their website.
Do we know any more about these organizations, the ones you just mentioned, My Faith Votes and Million Voices? Who are they?
Well, we should say that they are both Christian organizations. My Faith Votes says on their website that their vision is to see, and this is a quote, an America where God is honored in the public square and biblical truth is advanced in our culture. Million Voices describes itself as a, quote, association of churches focused on communicating guiding truths through cultural apologetics and political discipleship. And we reached out to both organizations, but so far we've not heard back from them.
Right. Okay. So Hays CISD has received thousands of these posters from these two organizations. How has the district approached displaying these in each classroom, and what sort of communication have they had with parents about all of this?
Well, the district sent an email to parents on September 15th. And in that email, it was very long, and it explained that this is not their long-term practice, they said their long-term practice is to shield their schools from any kind of ensnarement in political entanglements, they called it. But the district went on to explain in this email that it services tens of thousands of students and parents, and that district leaders feel it's not really their place to take sides. That was the language they used. They said they don't want to take sides or even appear to do so. And they said the district, though, is bound by laws and mandates, and that they plan to do this, they said, the Hays way.
What do they mean by that, the Hays way?
Yeah, so the district is displaying the Ten Commandments in classrooms as they are required to do by law. But they also decided to put up posters of the Bill of Rights, like you see right there on the screen. They decided to put posters up of the Bill of Rights too. District leaders said one of the arguments being used to display the Ten Commandments is that they are foundational historical concepts that have shaped many laws in the United States. But they said that description also applied to the Bill of Rights, which they say happens to be the primary argument against displaying posters of the Ten Commandments. So they chose to post both in classrooms right next to each other.
You visited Lehman High School. This is what those posters look like. For those who can't see, maybe listening on our podcast, can you describe what these posters actually look like? What do they say?
Right. So in every classroom, we went to multiple in Lehman, there's a black poster of the Ten Commandments. nothing else on them because they are required not to have anything else on them. And then there is a poster of the Bill of Rights right next to it. And the law is very specific on what the Ten Commandments posters are supposed to look like. It requires that they be at least 16 inches wide and 20 inches tall. The poster can only include the text of the Ten Commandments, nothing else. And they can't be conspicuously placed. So they have to be, and this is a quote from the law, legible to a person with average vision from anywhere in the classroom. Like I said, we were in layman's classrooms. I don't have average eyesight, but with my contacts on, I could read it and see it. And as I said, Hayes went a step beyond. In addition to the Ten Commandments and the Bill of Rights that are right next to each other, there's also like a little placard or a little tinier poster that says, that's on display, and it makes clear that the school district is posting the Ten Commandments because they are legally required to do so.
And that might be that little white the placard that Kelly mentioned that you can see kind of in between those two posters there at the top. So these have been up now in Lehman High School. What have students told you about this? Have they noticed these posters on display?
They've definitely noticed. So in Lehman, they're high school kids, so they're definitely more inclined to notice something like that being posted. And even before the posters went up, we learned from the school district that they have like a student advisory council that talked about a lot of different things that affect their schools coming out of the legislature. And this was one of the things that they were discussing. I talked to one junior while I was there who she had a very interesting perspective. She said that she herself is a Christian, but she was worried that some of her classmates that don't share her faith might feel that they're not welcome because the Ten Commandments were on the wall and maybe not other religious texts. And these were conversations that she was already having with her classmates where they were expressing some discomfort.
What about teachers? What have they said to you?
The teachers, I mean, they're employed by the school district, so they're not really sharing necessarily their personal opinion, but they were sharing that this was already sparking conversations. We had one English teacher that we spoke to who said just the day before the posters were delivered and she's opening up the package to put them up on the wall, and a student asked whether or not they would have to recite the Ten Commandments along with the Pledge of Allegiance. And she said, on the one hand, she's not really there to be a preacher or on her soapbox about anything or to convince students of anything. But on the other hand, she is noticing that it's at least sparking conversations with students about things that they had not necessarily talked about before. It sparked one student, that one that talked to her and asked if they would have to recite the Ten Commandments. She said it sparked her to do some research of her own about how the law came to be, about what the conversations were in the legislature. And she kind of described that as the silver lining of this process. I also asked both teachers that I spoke to, are you kind of dreading maybe a student who isn't Christian coming up and asking why this text and not another? And the English teacher that I spoke to said actually she was kind of eager for that conversation to play out between the students and to see, what conversations come up from that. So I guess we have to remember that we're talking to educators who kind of believe in the idea that anything that gets their kids reading and talking about things, that they're more curious, or at least this teacher was, about what those conversations would be.
Yeah. Well, a controversial and a complicated topic, especially with these various lawsuits that we mentioned, different districts required to do different things currently. Kelly, thank you so much for breaking it all down for us. And if you are interested in seeing Kelly's full report on this, head over to KXAN.com right now and click on the Investigations tab. Thanks for joining us this week for Inside the Investigation. I'm Christopher Adams. We'll see you next time.